is a calling funds exist. Okay. All right. You ready?
Yeah, I think it's on.
Let me turn on my video.
Can I not get you though?
I'm gonna stand up.
Well, it's pointing towards the front.
Just for context this morning, guys, if you would please, when you're presenting out front, so we can record. So, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us for our second board performance planning meeting. I know some of you are new to this first meeting, and so I did ask Mr. Chavez to come up and do a quick connection from the work that was done last month. And so, board, just to remind you, these board performance planning meetings are being done in alternate months, with leadership and academics presenting one month, business and operations presenting the month after, and so on and so forth. The idea is to bring you an outcome-based meeting that really describes the work that we're doing in the school district around academics, around enrollment, around our finances, and around operations, technology, all the different areas you're going to hear about today. And so you're going to hear a lot of things that are directly aligned from last month. So I'll give you a perfect example. You're going to hear about the dual credit stipend that we're going to be bringing to the board this month for recommendation. Last month it was brought up how many kids are in these courses and why we need the dual credit stipend. This month you're going to hear on the business and operations side, what does that amount to in terms of money? Because obviously we have a house budget, right? About $96 million. So we need to make sure that we stay within the house budget. But you're also going to be given information on where the budget is at this time. So this is the month of October. You'll see us again in this group again in December. I think at the end there's dates there. And so you'll start seeing amounts drop. You'll also hear about our different grants. ESSER's a real big one right now. Where are we spending that? You'll hear about that. And then of course, any items that we're considering for the future also. So as we're presenting today, by all means, ask questions. This is being recorded. It's being recorded because we will share with the rest of the board trustees that could not make it. These also live on the superintendent's page on the website. In case any constituent asks you, hey, what are these meetings about? Go find and look them up. And so they can see exactly what we're talking about. And so with that being said, I will turn it over to Myrna. This is Myrna's side of the house and the presentation, and then we'll move forward.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. The first thing we're going to do is, as always, we're going to talk today like we do every presentation with our 5 priorities in mind. Mainly on student success, students, families, and community, and how operations supports those endeavors that we work towards every day. You've seen this from Ms. Salinas and from our academics and leadership team. All the work that we do, we try to align to our SGS. You hear things about our SMART goals and what we're building towards. We're not there yet, but as we move and do the work in operations, we're all driving in the same direction around innovation and into creating SMART goals that are sustainable for the future and gives us a platform in which to operate in future years for us and for anyone that comes after us. I want to have Mr. Chavez come up. I know a lot of you weren't here last time. I want him to preface some of the conversations he and his team brought up last week, or last month rather, to give you a little synopsis and tie in to some of the conversations that we're going to continue today. So Mr. Chavez?
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Last time we talked in September, our first piece was talking about attendance and enrollment. We gave a snapshot of what's happening with our attendance, not only locally, but also on a national basis. What was requested from the board was, what does our local birth rate look like? So in November, we're coming back to you with those locally by zip code birth rates and see what that numbers look like. The other thing we talked about was enrollment, how we started off with about 6,000 and currently around 8,000 students, a little over 8,000 students. Talked about some of the definitions. I received feedback from that particular presentation that you really like the definitions and the context in which we're providing this information. So we will continue to do that, not only in our board updates, but also next November when we meet our next month. We then talked about our advanced academics review, talking about early college, high school, what is it, how many students are enrolled, what courses do we offer, how many do we teach, how many does the university, does the post-secondary institution teach. We also talked about P-TECH, how we're rolling that out and the need for marketing in those particular areas. We've already started that since the last time we met. focusing on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade because right now they're making decisions as what school they're going to go to, what programs they're going to enter. And we do believe that we have to have a presence at each of our middle schools in order for students to understand what is offered at the 3 different high schools. Next year, well, our plan is for next year to roll that out at our elementaries. So that way students coming to school from the first time they step foot into Edgewood, they'll understand what is offered at the apex of our program in the high school. Then we went over career and technology education, shared with you, again, the definitions and context of what CT is, provided a plethora of our programs of study. Many of those pieces perhaps some of the people probably didn't know it existed. We shared our enrollment numbers. We talked about what our marketing plan, so when I say marketing plan for advanced academics, that's coupled also with CTE. We're looking at how we can market those pieces to our middle school students again, coupling these two components together. Since we offered P-TECH, starting last year at Kennedy, this year Kennedy's in their second year, this year Memorial's in their first year of P-TECH, our goal is to really market these programs together so that students understand what opportunities exist. Not only opportunities that exist, but also the financial savings that students garner when they go to our career and technical education programs. So I'd like to thank my team. They did a fabulous job, Mr. Basuto, Ms. Salinas, Ms. Balzaldua, and the other team. Now, since then, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that we took that particular presentation on the road, so to speak. The following Tuesday, or that Friday, we presented the same presentation to all of the SLT. That Thursday was the first Thursday of the month. We presented that to the entire district leadership team, consisting of all of our campus leadership teams and the directors across the district. So this information has gone out throughout the district. Concomitantly, we'll do the same thing with our finance and business presentation at the beginning of next week and of course the beginning of next month. So I want to thank you all. We appreciate your feedback for our presentation this past September, and we can't wait to see you in November. Ms.
Thank you,
Martinez.
Mr. Chavez.
Thank you.
So this is who you're going to hear about today, from today. The reason, and you know, Ms. Calderon lives in our houses. She promotes a lot of our things, but you're going to hear different things from the team that are going to connect to some of the work directly that Mr. Chavez and his team presented last month. And you're going to hear some of the progress and some of the supports that operations provides. So do you mind getting the clicker, Mr. Reno? Go ahead. Here's the agenda, and it seems really long. What I'm going to let you know today is that a lot of the topics we're going to cover today are going to seem redundant. These are things that you've heard from us over the last few years, really. What we're going to be able to do today is make the connections in what happens behind the scenes a little bit, if you will. By the time usually we go to the board and we go to our workshops, we've already sifted through information. We've already sifted through data. We try to bring the best recommendation forward. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. And as leadership presented last month, you heard some of those numbers, some of the challenges that we have in connecting and bringing students into an understanding of what the district offers. And today you're going to hear a little bit more about what it takes to run some of the programs, some of the challenges we hear in HR, what operations has to do to prepare a building, what technology has to bring to the table to make sure that students have what they need in a classroom, and then of course what it takes to finance, and how do we get the word out through marketing, right? What exactly does that mean? So these are all the topics we're going to cover today. It is a lot, but we're going to try to be as brief as we can. I have one ask, because there is a lot of information, but it's hopefully condensed in a manner that's going to be understandable. There's going to be connections that are being made as each presenter speaks. After a person presents, if you can see if maybe we answer your question before they finish. If not, feel free to ask questions in between the presentation. So when Mr. Vino finishes, if you've got questions for her specifically or the programs or something she's presenting, we can ask questions as soon as she finishes, and we'll kind of follow that cadence, see if that works a little bit better. She just might have answers before we finish her presentation, so. All right, Ms. Trevino?
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here this morning to kind of give you a little bit of an update. So as Ms. Martinez mentioned, and also Mr. Chavez mentioned on some of the programs that we offer, I'm going to be touching base on career technology, the dual credit, and then alternative certification, and this is all due to staffing, right? So now we're recruiting our kids, getting our kids here. Well, we also need to make sure we have the staff here to support a lot of these programs that we're offering. So what I'm going to go over here is just some of the information that we have as far as current staffing models and how we're staffed at the campuses. And then over with our alternative certification is in some of those areas, sometimes if we cannot find certified teachers, what are we doing, right? So I'll go into a little bit more in detail. So here with the high school, I'm going to start with the middle school and career technology because we have, as Mr. Chavez mentioned, extended some of these programs out to our younger students. So at the middle school level, starting with Brentwood, we have 4 teachers that are at Brentwood right now. We have 2 in applied engineering and robotics, 1 computer science, and then another one that does computer science / robotics. So that's a total of 4 that they have at that campus. At Brent, we have 2 that are doing video game design, arts, auto tech, video tech, and communication. And then at Gus Garcia, human growth development, lifetime. So a lot of these are programs that are being implemented as far as filtering up to the high school. So as you can see, when I show you the high school, you'll see that some of these areas, of course, are already building the students up, that are really exposing the students at a younger age and allowing an opportunity. So in doing so, we have to make sure that we have the staff at these levels as well, right? So when we look at these, we do have some teachers that are on alternative certification programs, and I'll explain that a little bit further as we move on. So at the high school, because this is really where the students at this point are getting to the level of their certifications, they're getting to the level of their internships. Of course, you're going to see more staff is needed at the high schools, and of course, our enrollment. So at Kennedy right now, we currently have 9 teachers teaching in these specific areas: automotive, business, computer animation, computer science, general employability, criminal justice, and graphic arts. So those are the areas that we have at Kennedy, feeding that, that pathway or that innovation zone that we pretty much have. Then at Memorial High School, we have a total of 9 as well. We target, of course, business, consumer science, culinary arts, health science, and principles of education. That's the area over at Memorial. So both high schools have 9. Then at Fine Arts Academy, we have 4. There's the cosmetology, the engineering, the manufacturing. Okay, that's what we have here as far as our staffing models for the high school and the middle school for CTE. Again, in these areas with CTE, it is looking at teachers to make sure they have the information and they have the certification, but also we can look to see that they have the work experience. I'm sure you heard from the other group is that a lot of times these are hard to fill positions because of the need and the programming that we offer. Okay. Now our dual credit piece, we have dual credit staff that we hire both at the high school. Of course, as a principal, when we go out and look for teachers, we want to make sure that we have what we need. If we offer the dual credit program, which is what we want, and we're expanding on that, of course, that's going to require us to go out and hire staff that are qualified to teach these programs because it's a benefit not only to the students getting dual credit, but also a benefit to having the staff on campus. So at Kennedy High School, we currently have 3 teachers that are qualified and have been accepted as adjunct instructors. When I say adjunct, is that they have to have the qualifications needed to teach the class. They have to apply to the university or to ACCD, Alamo Community College program, and they have to be accepted. So here we put 18 hours, and it is 18 hours in the content field, but it has to be really the 18 hours that they're going to cover in that particular course. So if they're teaching a particular course and it's English 1, Freshman Comp 1, they have to show that the 18 hours that they've taken are going to meet the requirement to be able to teach that course. So it's a little bit more intense than just having 18 hours in a master's level course. So that's why when we bring the dual credit stipend, that is why we're doing it, because it is a little bit harder and more complex to apply and qualify for the programming. Memorial High School has 5. They have 5 teachers that are fully certified, and they teach 15 courses. At Kennedy, we teach 12. So again, this is a program that is up and coming. We see it that it's going to be evolving a little bit more, and we know that we're going to need more teachers to meet that qualification to have the dual credit certification and to meet that requirement. So then, that being said, with CTE dual credit, sometimes we have hard to fill positions, right? Those are positions that are hard to fill, as well as some of the others when we look at science or we look at math. Sometimes those are hard to fill positions. When I say hard to fill, that means sometimes individuals that come in don't have the appropriate certification, but they may have work experience, right? And so really you want a balance of that, because sometimes you bring the experience from the industry or you bring the experience from a classroom, right? So if you can have both, that's a plus. But in a lot of cases, we're not able to get individuals, so when we do that, we have to offer alternate certification programs. So in doing so, last year, we did start the year off, we had about 67 teachers vacancies at the beginning of the year, which was a big struggle, of course, when we started with COVID. This year, of course, I'm happy to say we had 100%. So in having 100%, we did have to, resort to the alternate certification programs, right? These are not brand new programs because of COVID. These have been around for many years as far as alternate programs, right? Alternative certification programs. What we have right now, and I'm showing you here, there's a total of 68 teachers that we have in the classrooms that are on alternative certification type of program or on a waiver. And I'll break it down a little bit more for you so you can kind of see where we're at. So under our alternative certification program, these are the programs, like I said, and these have been around for a while. This is iTeach, Region 20, top programs, the Teacher Builder, Texas Teachers. These are all external programs outside of Edgewood ISD. They kind of have their own program, they establish it, they work with State Board of Education to be able to fulfill the requirements to be an alternative certification program. Teachers or individuals go and work with them. They may have a certification, say in math, but they're not a teacher. So they may have a bachelor's degree in science, but they're not a teacher certified individual. Those types of individuals can go through these programs. They work with them, they have different requirements that are expected of them, and they can qualify to be a teacher, right? In most cases, depending on where they're at in the program, they provide a statement of eligibility, which for us as a school district, we know that's what we have to ask for. When they're part of that program, we say, do you have a statement of eligibility? That lets us know how far in they are to the program and that they're eligible to be able to be hired in the school district, okay? But these are the programs that we work with. We currently have 26 teachers that are part of this program. Okay, and as they move along, some sooner than others, depending on where they're at in the program, they may get the statement of eligibility sooner. So far right now, out of the 26, 10 of the 26 have already received their statement of eligibility currently. Now we have Teach Worthy as well. This is another program. This one is brand new to us this year because of our T-Class grant that we applied for. So Teach Worthy is a different program. You have heard a little bit about it. We acknowledged some of the individuals at the last board meeting. And this program is kind of twofold. We have those that are degreed and we have those that are non-degreed. First, I'm going to talk about the degree. So those that are degreed are similar to the ones I had mentioned before that may have a math degree but are not teachers. So in that case, they go through this program with us. They're not going through a particular program. We contracted with Teach Worthy, and so that is pretty much our program that we're working with and embedding kind of the expectations that we have. And so they qualify to be under Teach Worthy. We can hire them as teachers, and they get a full teaching certificate, full salary of $58,000, okay? They also have the requirements pretty much of the 30 hours of observation they have to fulfill, and then they have to pass the core content. So right now in Teach Worthy degree teachers, we have 14. Out of those 14, one of them has received the statement of eligibility. So we are working with them. When we meet with these individuals, we do review their transcripts. We have Ms. Tomasini Montana, who's part of the program. She meets with the individuals when they apply. We review their transcripts to make sure that they have the coursework that is needed to hopefully embed. I'm not going to say every single time they've had it, but we really look at the transcripts to make sure that we're placing them correctly, to make sure that they're not just filling this on, but they're also supporting our students appropriately. The other part of Teach Worthy is our non-degree. This is where we're building our pipeline and working on building our staff that we currently have. This is where we acknowledge some of our paraprofessionals that were working with us. We have a total of 6 right now that are non-degree. So this program, of course, they have to have 75 or more hours working towards a degree. But once we meet with them, if they are somewhat interested in a teaching field, then this is when they can qualify for this program. So a lot of them are already going to school. Some of them may be going for nursing. Some of them may be going for, MBA, whatever the case may be. But if they express interest in wanting to shift and become a teacher, then they qualify here. We work with them. So they do not have a degree. So because they do not have a degree, they're qualified to get a salary that's adjusted. They don't get the full salary of starting teachers, $58,000. We start them at $40,000. So that's also part of the grant. So they start at $40,000. They get assigned a mentor that works with them. they're at the campus, they work with them. That mentor is actually the certified teacher and is a teacher of record. But this teacher right here, which is our non-degree teacher, they actually are the teacher in the classroom, but they're being supported by that mentor, okay? So we have 6 of these individuals that are working throughout our campuses that are working right now with our students. So you've also heard me talk about District of Innovation, different programs that we have. Because we are a District of Innovation and we have applied to be a District of Innovation, again, it goes back to those hard to fill positions, which is usually your CTE, of course, even in dual credit. Most of the time you have individuals, because we can bring people in from the university level, but they're not here as teachers, as high school credential teachers, right? So I think it's a benefit to us to be able to get both and have the teacher here on staff with us, because they know our students, they work with our students, they're familiar with our programs, and it's always a benefit to try and have our own. But under our local teaching certificate, this is a District of Innovation. This is something that we have because we're a District of Innovation. We can work with individuals that come in, and if they don't meet the other program of going through the alternative certification program of Region 20 or I Teach or Texas Teachers, we can work with them and start working with them in the program. And they can become certified or have a waiver under the District of Innovation with us. Okay, that is what the District of Innovation is, and y'all probably have heard a little bit about it. So in this case, these could be individuals that may be at the end of their junior year or their senior year, but they're going the traditional, and I say traditional only because this is kind of the best way to kind of separate them, is those individuals that have gone to school to become teachers, are working through the program, and they're already working on their last year. They may only need, usually the last semester, the last 2 semesters, you're working on observation and internships. You know, where you go out there, you do your student teaching, I think it's still what it was called back then when I think I was going to school. So you do your student teaching model, but if they're already at that level, then that's when we can place them under a District of Innovation, because now we can work with them here. And they would be under our local certification area. So we have 14 of those individuals that are going the traditional route, and then we have 3 that we have on a District of Innovation permit with us. These are the individuals that have transferred from out of state that do not have a Texas teaching certificate. They may have a teaching certificate in another state, but they don't have it here in Texas. So we have a total under that is 17 individuals here. And this is kind of working through the pipeline and trying to find ways. So just trying to look for other avenues to make sure that we were able to fill the different needs that we had at the campuses. Then we have another opportunity that we have, and this is for our bilingual program. I know that was not something that we talked about last month, but I think it's important for y'all to know that we have our bilingual exception waiver. What this is there are individuals that are sitting in our bilingual classrooms but do not have the bilingual certification with them, right? Because in bilingual, you have to have the certification to be a bilingual teacher. So we review the individuals' transcripts, we look at the program, we work with our bilingual director, senior director here, Mr. Rodriguez, to see that we can support the teacher. We look to see what the need is, what campus is needed, and how we're going to be able to support these individuals. If we feel that this is an individual that we can bring in under a waiver, we work with them with pedagogy, we work with them on even test-taking skills, then we go ahead and apply for a waiver for the individual. Again, it's a 1 year. Right now, we currently have 5 of our individuals that are on our bilingual waivers. Yes.
And Mr. Trevino, that also applies to the board. Bilingual is also the same thing for dual language teachers. So it's the same type of, the same information applies. This is a real important area board because obviously this is one of those high need areas in terms of teacher certification. So you'll see this keep coming up continually in our conversations. And of course, we'll be adapting to the market needs because this has always been a high needs area, but now when you consider the universities are struggling and they have a challenge as well in terms of getting students through their pipelines, this is going to be a challenge for us many years to come.
Thank you, sir. And that is true because a lot of these hard to fill. You have been very gracious in approving a lot of these. We had the sign-on bonus that we adjusted. We also adjusted the stipend for the bilingual program. And that is the reason why we bring these initiatives, just to make sure that we're fully staffed and that we're enticing a lot of these hard to fill positions. So these areas that I addressed today are those areas that normally we struggle to fill, and I wanted just to I wanted you to have an idea of what we do and how we're able to fill those positions that we need. And then also being able to support these programs, because we have to identify these teachers and then be able to support them. So again, with your approval, we were able to support the campuses and provide them an instructional coach. They each have 2 instructional coaches. Those instructional coaches support these types of teachers. But we have to also let them know that these individuals need extra support so that we identify them and they know where they're at. So being able to support them is good. Being able to fill the position is one thing, but being able to support them is the other. And that's huge that we're able to do both. So thank you for that. And I think that's my part. If there's any questions that maybe I need to answer before we transition. Yes.
And along with helping these professionals attain the certification, do we also attach a retention where they have to stay with us for X amount of years, or they have to not pay us back, so to speak, but just to come and help us in our district?
We do in some cases, like with the non-degree, I know for sure those individuals, we do, we work with them.
The teacher programs for
Correct. So we do work with them, that we have them kind of sign something that they're committing to stay with us at least 2 years, or, kind of something like that. Through the bilingual program, we gave them that stipend, so we extended it in 2 years. Like, we didn't just give them the money, we extended it, like 24 months actually. So just trying to keep them here. And also, I think when we did survey them periodically to find out what exactly they need. I think that's also another way to be able to retain them and keep them here by providing them what they say they need. So I think we try to do both, but that's a great question on trying to get them to stay and how they commit to us long term.
Yeah, because it's a two-way street, and I mean, I would feel obligated as one of these teachers to, stay within a certain district for a certain time. But I'm wondering if, and I know we do that, you do this every year, that we try and maintain parity with, as far as pay with other districts, as far as trying to retain these teachers. So, I just hope that the number gets less, because it will, in the 68 of what we needed at the beginning of the year. But if it doesn't, then this sounds like a good way to fill that void. So.
And thank you for that. And we are working right now with UTSA and TAMUSA with clinical teachers. And clinical meaning those that are doing their student teaching right now, and they're on their last semester. So we have gone out, Ms. Montana goes out and she meets with the groups. We even had our bilingual department go out and meet with these individuals, try to entice them to come in and do their observations here, and then hopefully we can kind of keep them here long term. Even trying to see what we can do to, give them a little stipend, to stay here. So we're looking for different grant opportunities to be able to do that, to hopefully kind of keep them here. But again, have them sign something saying that they're gonna hopefully commit to staying here with us, working with us. So thank you for that.
Because I wonder, it seems like the mobility part of teaching is out the window. It's more like the.
Yes, definitely.
It's a shame, but.
Part of it is that. I think the other part is support systems. I'll give you a real world example. Our bilingual team's out in Houston right now at the Texas Association of Bilingual Ed. They actually presented yesterday to all the VESL students across the state. That's the Bilingual Education Student Organization clubs that are at every university. They're presenting to them, and because everyone's trying to get in front of kids as early as you can to identify with your school district. And the one thing they're asking is, well, what happens once I come in? Like, what are y'all going to do to help me, grow in my position as a teacher? And so they know everybody needs them. And so we're having to reinvent how we do things. I mean, we just, with Teachworthy now, our current freshman sophomores at Memorial, those are the ones that I had lunch with our board president here a few weeks ago. Those are the groups that are actually, when they graduate, if they come out with that associates, they'll be able to qualify under Teachworthy and go straight into a classroom. So with those kids, what I've seen other districts do in a very, not Teachworthy, a different program, is they have a big signing day. Kid signs a promissory note saying that when you're finished with college, you have a job offer here, and here's your salary and those kinds of things. the step in the middle that's taken out is that they really don't have to leave in our case, they wouldn't have to leave the district. If they keep going to the university here, so we have the agreements with A&M and San Antonio, they can work with us all day, go to school at night, and then as soon as they get that degree, they transfer into the classrooms. So that's why they're trying to get ahead with kids. But yes, teaching profession is changing. I mean, it is completely changed.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to transition to Mr. Williams on operations.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, so I wanted to discuss with you I know operations is vast and broad, but wanted to just touch on transportation, and give you an update on the vehicle lease with Enterprise. Also to talk to you about child nutrition and help you understand some of the acronyms and some of those programs that we talk about, but give you a little bit more of a deeper dive, and bring you up to date on just a few of the vast number of projects that we have started, in progress, or completed in PPS. So starting with transportation. All district vehicles, not just the buses, are part of transportation, which means that the transportation director in that department, they're responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of those vehicles. So with that, in our strategic plan from operations and the portion that's specifically in the transportation department, we brought to the board a few times over the last few years the state of the vehicles, the district's fleet. And so we were having some concerns about the aging out of these vehicles and how do we accumulate and get new vehicles. And so that number, buying them straight out, it got kind of expensive. So we're trying to create a plan on how to go about acquiring these vehicles. So with help from the finance team, we were able to look at Enterprise as a solution. And with that, the board approved contracting with Enterprise to lease these vehicles. So up to date, as of today, the police department, they ordered 14 vehicles, and they have received all except one of those vehicles. As you can see, PPS, unfortunately, has not received any of the 29 that we have ordered. Transportation, they ordered 2 vehicles. These were not buses, these were actually white fleets. They received those vehicles. Technology, they're 6 for 6, so we're maxed out there. They have their vehicle. And athletics, they ordered 2 trucks and they received 1. Let's go back to PPS. Why haven't they received any vehicles? As you know, in the country, nationwide, there are some chip shortages, and so for that reason, vehicles are very hard to come by. We did even look at maybe trying to purchase outside of the lease, just purchase a few vehicles to bring this fleet up to speed to get them some vehicles. Again, the chip shortage is nationwide, so even purchasing the vehicles outright is not an option. So we're still monitoring it with Enterprise. They're working with us. We meet with them weekly. And so as soon as those vehicles are available, we'll make sure we get them into our fleet. Child nutrition services. Again, we talk about acronyms in education. Child nutrition is an arm of education, so we have our own unique set of acronyms. And just to share a few with you, you probably heard them before, but we never really break them down to tell you what they really are. So the first one is CEP. That's Community Eligibility Provision. This is the provision that guides all school districts in the nation as to whether or not they can have a school meal service. And when I say can they have it, they can actually have one, but it gives the provisions and guidelines to how to kind of run some of those programs. And so when you look at the programs that we run here in the district, we have the school breakfast program, the National School Lunch Program, and we have the CACFP. And one more, we have the summer program. We call it normally the summer feeding program, but it's actually the summer food service program. And sometimes you'll hear SSO, the seamless summer option. So again, a whole lot of different acronyms and different programs, but we do have one for each area. And we actually participate in all four. Is that 4? Yeah, all 4 areas. Now, going back to the school breakfast program, an arm of that is the breakfast in the classroom. We have breakfast in the classroom at every campus. Prior to my arrival, that was not the case. So now I can say that we're fully invested in breakfast in the classroom at every campus. Also, with the CACFP, under that program, you have the supper program. Originally, in the district prior to my arrival, we had the snack program. We moved to the supper program. The snack program under the CACFP allows districts to give the afternoon or evening snack to students that stay for tutoring. Under the supper program, same deal, except it's a more substantial meal, so kids are being sustained and getting a little, more food. Let's just say it that way, there's more food. With that comes an increase in the reimbursement for the school district. So that's a good win for both the student and for the school district, which is still that funding goes back to the kids. So it's a double win for the kids. Now, in saying that about the school breakfast program, breakfast in the classroom, and the supper program, that increase in revenue from the reimbursement, the school district sometimes finds itself, if we're not monitoring close enough, we find ourselves in excess of funds, which by Texas Department of Agriculture standards and being in compliance with them, as a district, we cannot have more than 3 months operating funds in our fund balance, in the child nutrition fund balance. That being the case, we find ourselves in that situation right now. It's about a little north of $918,000. At that point, we have to put a plan together about how we're going to spend and expend those funds. We've done so. TDA, Texas Department of Agriculture, they have accepted our plan, and we presented that to the board at the last board workshop, and we'll ask for approval of that plan at the next board meeting. Everything within that plan, all that funding and those projects have to be directly related to the child nutrition department and going back to the needs of the kids. And so we've done that. With that being said, in the future, because we always want to be in compliance, no matter what, going forward, we're going to monitor even closer that funding, because we expect that breakfast in the classroom, as well as the supper program, the reimbursement, it's been put out tentatively that those amounts for reimbursement will be going up. So that's even more funding for the school district, more funding for the kids in these programs. So that's great. So we're going to monitor closely and try to expend those funds as we go and not get that excess in the fund balance. Again, we want to stay in compliance, and we thank the state for allowing us to have an opportunity to put a plan together and still keep the funds rather than them taking them from us, and being able to put that back into the program for our students. Okay. With PPS, we have, like I said, a plethora of projects out there. I just want to touch on a few. Because the board approved the RFPs listed here, is directly related to the work that was able to be done at these different sites. We have some routes that were completed at these 3 campuses, Stafford, Cisneros, and Winston. We also had Stafford ECC parking lot completed there. Again, it ties right back into those RFPs that the board approved. At JFK and at PPS, we have some projects that are in progress right now, and then we have one that's pending, or we have more than one that's pending. We have some that are pending. The Brentwood enclosure to tie in Brentwood with the old Hosher building, so that kids can have a thoroughfare to walk through without being in the elements. Also for student safety as they transition from building to building. And we have the chillers that the board approved last month at several campuses. Now with this, since in the last 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, the board has committed and a little north of $13 million for major projects and about $8 million for minor projects and renovations. With the chillers, we're looking at about $5.8 million that the board approved for those district-wide, as well as something that I didn't list here, is the acquisition of the warehouse that the board approved last month. And so that was about $5.8 million for the acquisition of the warehouse, which will now be the district's central receiving facility. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that as well. Now, are there any questions for me regarding any of the things that I've spoken?
Sir, you said we're going to have, the way it looks now, we're going to have an increase in the allotments for these programs for the food programs, do they base it on the number of meals prepared or the number of people that are eligible?
I don't know if I understand your question.
You're getting monies, you're getting additional monies for the supper and for in the classroom. So does the government base that on the numbers we give them as far as how many meals we've served, or how many of these kids are eligible, our families for after
How many
school?
participants?
It's meal served.
Meals served?
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, because I still didn't understand the question. I'm thinking that you're asking me, how does the USDA determine if they're going to increase the rate? Is that, but that's not what you're asking, is it?
Well, kind of, going to increase the amount that they give you.
Right. My understanding of it is USDA is increasing that reimbursement rate across the nation, not just because of Edgewood's participation or eligibility. If that answers that part of the question.
Kind of too,
If I
yeah.
may, so there's really two questions in what you're asking. So the eligibility provision, as long as we're at 62.5 or better, the USDA says all of the district qualifies at no cost to the district,
Okay.
right? And Mr. Williams and his staff serve the meals to the students, and if we serve 1,000 meals, the USDA will reimburse us, depending on the program, will reimburse us a certain amount. And then the increase you're talking about, because Mr. Williams talked about that, that's based on a national survey. I don't know how USDA, I'm not gonna pretend, but the USDA determines that, and Mr. Williams will not have a choice when USDA determines that, because they're sending us a reimbursement. So there's a qualification piece, that's the eligibility. Then there's the program, so they'll reimburse us a different rate for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. That's based on the number of kids we serve. And then we have the potential increase, we don't know how much that is yet, that will come as a result of a mandate by the USDA. And that will also get that reimbursement based on the number of meals that are served. So if there's an increase, it'll be based on the number of meals served. Does that make a little, okay.
So, but then in the end, you either use it or lose it.
Yes.
Potentially, yes, sir. That's
Oh,
right.
we
But
can
we,
use
but
it.
we will use it, right. And that's going back to that, what we were saying about the excess fund balance. We will definitely use it. However, we don't want to be in a position where we're out of compliance and continue to be in that state of non-compliance, because USDA could come back, or TDA, and say, you continue to be out of compliance, so maybe we just take it, you know. So we don't want to be in that position.
On the new facility, how many refrigerators are going to have in there?
We haven't determined that yet, sir. We're looking at space, and we're looking at the type of unit. It may be better to have, let's just say, 2 units, or it may be better to have 1 unit that's very expansive. So we're working with those companies and our architects to figure out which would work best for us.
One more thing, sir. The employees who provide these meals, is it the same employee that goes in at 5 in the morning, comes out at 7 at night, or is it,
They have
is it
shifts.
shifts?
It
Okay.
has shift work.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's not the same employee.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
did you say you were gonna let us know what you plan to do with the $918,000?
Yes, ma'am. I put, it's in the board packet for this month.
Okay.
I can put it in the Friday board update, again this week. And it'll show you per dollar, where those dollars are going.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea, some of it is going to Kennedy to paint and redo their cafeteria. Also to put new furniture, cafeteria furniture in
Oh,
there.
you can use it for other than just food?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great.
That's what we're doing with it.
Okay.
We're buying some new freezers and coolers at
Great.
several other campuses. We're looking at a couple of vehicles, even though they're hard to come by. We're looking at a couple of vehicles that we want to buy outright for child nutrition, some vans, so that we can transport food to Learn for Life, as well as Burleson, because we're not cooking from those kitchens right now. We're driving the meals there, preparing them somewhere else and driving them there. So that'll help with that, as well as our caterings that we do. So those vehicles will help with that. So,
Great.
but I have that plan, it's listed out. for every dollar, it has to be, and I'll put it in the Friday board update for you.
Thank you very much, sir. And so everyone is receiving all meals free right now?
Yes, ma'am. If you're 62.5% CEP eligible, then you're 100% CEP district. So when you hear just in common talk, people say, are you a CEP district? Well, technically, every district in Texas is probably going to qualify for that, just about every district. But when you hear that, when they say you're a CEP district, they mean, are you 100% CEP, meaning all of your kids eat free, and we are. Now, during COVID, all districts were given a special waiver, and all students ate free, but they weren't a CEP district necessarily. And so now that provision is gone, and now we're back to being a CEP district, as they say.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Dr. H, this is the same, the workers I was asking about in the cafeteria, some of the same workers we augmented in their hourly wage, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And they, food services has done a great job. They're self-funded. There's a lot of districts that have to supplement their programs. They've done really, really well. The fact that we have surplus is a bonus thanks to programs that he's brought in, especially the separate programs. Because there's a lot of food services that are not self-funded and general funded that having to supplement some of the programs. So,
District funds?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
Good morning. And today we'll be looking at network updates, devices, and then future upgrades, and how we support the instructional information that, and presentations that you saw with Mr. Chavez's group, and then also how we support operations as well. So when you think about a network, it's like a nerve center. It's like your nervous system, right? And without your nervous system, your muscles don't work, your fingers don't work, nothing seems to work. And when I began to look and list at everything that could possibly be on the network, it's astounding what it can be. It supports marquees, projectors, laptops, fax machines, fire alarms. This is a real irritating slide to have to go through. That's why I put it in here, because you have to keep pushing the button, right? But web pages, HVAC, curriculum, cameras, everything runs on the network and allows us access to the things we need to do the jobs that we do, whether it's instruction, whether it's in finance, whether it's in HR. All of the things that we do are really hinging on a healthy and stable network. So one of the ways that we are currently involved in stabilizing and making sure that our network is updated is we are in the middle right now of a switch project. And a switch, what a switch is, if you've got like a router, a network router at your house that you may be able to run cables out of, and then run your wireless, it's kind of an industrial one of those. It's about maybe as big as half this table. And they go in these racks. And every building has these switches in them. And our current, the older switches that we're replacing only allowed up to 10 gigabytes of input from our fiber connections that come in. The new switches are future-proof in that they are scalable to 20 gigabytes of fiber input should we ever need that much fiber. The older switches also were not able to be updated or upgraded. They were end of life pretty much, and so they needed to be we need new ones for the purpose of updating. You can't update a switch. We can't do our cybersecurity protocols unless we can keep updates on switches to keep threat actors out of our system. So that's one thing that we're doing right now. Access point upgrade, we're just about finished with this project. This is the first wave of access point. And this project actually, this one and the switch project started prior to me coming on, because I think they were pre-pandemic even. So these are finishing up those projects where we're putting brand new, using the latest wireless protocols, access in an initial set of classrooms. It's not enough for every classroom. It wasn't enough for every building. So we're going to come back through with another project to replace and update the rest of the district with current access points. And then for our network incident recovery, from our network incident in December, we are in the process of a network audit so that we can have someone walk every one of our data closets that we have, and then we'll get a map of all of the equipment that we have and the state that it is in as well. Devices. You may hear the words one-to-one, and what that means is actually two different kinds of one-to-one deployments for devices. We have an individual one-to-one where if you've got 9,000 students in your district, then you deploy 9,000 devices, and that's a one-to-one. Some of the issues that we have around that is not being able to get those devices back in with regularity, and then building in those checks and balances for having devices come in with regularity so that we can make sure that everything's updated and upgraded as well. The other model is a classroom one-to-one, and this is where you actually put a cart in every classroom. And it requires a few more devices, because if you've got a classroom that's first period that's got 15 students in it, and you've got a cart of 30, you've got about 15 devices that aren't being used. But the next period, you may have 36 students. In other words, you've got one less device than you need. So it requires a few more devices to go one-to-one classroom. It also allows you to have students who really need to check out a device, the ability for them to check out a device. We have about 2,000 to 3,000 end-of-life devices right now. So about 2,000, or just a little over 2,000 student, and then altogether 3,000 includes about 3/4 teacher devices that we're working on refreshing as well. The ECF3, this means the Emergency Connectivity Fund, the third window opened up in May. And we put in for Chromebooks to have 5,000 Chromebooks, and that was approved, so we will be receiving 5,000 Chromebooks to the district. And these Chromebooks will, by and large, for secondary, replace the current laptop fleet, by and large. And that is a huge benefit to us on many fronts. The Chromebooks get about 12 hours of battery life or better, whereas the current laptops, I think, you're getting the best ones that we have, you're probably getting 3 to 4 to 5 hours of battery life before they have to actually go back on a charger. So students are oftentimes having to switch out devices more frequently. The Chromebooks are also about half the cost of what we're currently paying for student laptops. So there's a financial benefit as well. This is how we support instruction and student success in technology. First of all, students have access to learning resources and the internet via the devices that we roll out to them. And this, I'm going to go back to the Chromebooks. The Chromebooks that sort of the model that we put together as a collaborative group between myself and the technology department and academics is that the Chromebook would have a SIM chip in it, so that if a student, if for whatever reason we have to go to one-to-one again and check these out to students so that they can have them all. We'll have a cellular service on board, so that we don't have to deal with hotspots or anything else. And this includes when they're using them in the classroom. If for whatever reason we've got a network outage or something going on, learning doesn't have to stop. Access to resources doesn't have to stop, because we'll have that cellular service on each of the devices for the students as well. And the other benefit for Chromebooks is this is the first year where online assessments is required. There will be no more paper assessments when we talk about state assessments. And we've got goals that are directly related to how students perform on those assessments. Currently, we sometimes have to switch out in the middle of an assessment because of battery life and whatever. So having a Chromebook or a device that has about 12 hours of battery life is going to really give the students the best opportunity for them to not have interruptions on those assessments. We're going to be doing a staff refresh, and then we've already started updating projectors. That's what AV audiovisual projectors in classrooms. We'll have to come back with another wave and really dig down and look at where we need to continue to replace audiovisuals. And we really want to go with these kind of things in the classroom as opposed to a projector. The cost is about the same, and these are a lot more flexible when you think about a projector that's hardwired. You run in the wires, and then next year a principal may want to completely redesign their campus. And that oftentimes means that we did it at the beginning of this year. We did it for Level Park. We pulled down projectors from other places and had to throw up projectors in several classrooms very quickly. These you just roll down the hallway. Very easy, very simple, and less destructive to the buildings, the building inside the classroom as well. We are working on identifying exactly what base set of technology should be in every classroom. What are we going to say as a district? In every classroom, this is what we have. And so we're working with academics to help us define that as well in instructional technology.
Mr. Greenhouse, can I make a point there? Board, that's really important for you guys, once we get that organized, that you guys sort of commit that to memory. I want you to think long-term. Once we say this is what a standard package looks like, then in thinking of the future, that's great advice between the team of 8, the superintendent and the board, because if that's the standard that we have, of course, that could change, but at least we have a standard package that we have that as board members should expect to see in schools, also our constituency should be able to see in schools. And right now it's around the packaging around technology, but at some point I'm going to ask operations to do the same thing and really have some standards in our buildings, because right now what we've done is, yes, we do want our principals to have flexibility, but at some point we're going to have to decide, our schools in elementary, this is what they have. It's this color in this school, and so it's standard. And there's a lot of cost cutting measures when you do those kinds of things. So I say that because, great point, Mr. Greathouse, and Mr. Williams is right next to me. So there's something to consider there as we move forward for the future.
Yeah, and you'll always have those one-offs. You know, when I think about a science lab's going to have a lot more technical things than just the base set. But you want to be able to walk into every room, and there's that continuity that you talked about, Dr. Hernandez, where we are able to know exactly what's going to go in every room. We don't have to try to think. And then working with our program partners as well to also facilitate the needs of special needs that they may have, in addition to what we call the base set of technology. Special programs, you know, you heard Career and Tech Ed today, and then I know that in Mr. Chavez's presentation with his group, you also heard a lot about Career and Tech Ed. I'm going to pull two of the more flashy ones. I think these are really great, because we really support all of Career and Tech Ed, and I'm working right now with Dr. Bland to really identify where the holes are and where they really need support across all of our programs. In every location. But I pulled out cybersecurity because this is a fantastic program. It's one that requires an incredible amount of planning because our students are actually learning and are being given the tools to understand what cybersecurity means, which requires they've got to understand what threats look like, and they need to be able to react to those threats in possibly a simulated environment. But we can't have all that just access to our network, so we've got to wall them off so they have access to download and install programs without potentially getting into our network and making some decisions about, hey, I just learned all the Wi-Fi passwords. You know, we don't want them in our network doing that, but I'll tell you, these right here, when you get a certification in this, the initial out-the-door price for someone who's got a little bit of skill, and it's gone through a program, a little bit of experience rather, and it's gone through the program, is close to $80,000. That's the starting salary for something like that. And it goes up to $115,000. That's about where the range is for this is an incredible opportunity for our students. There was a map that I saw yesterday that shows where everybody's being hit pretty regularly, and right now education is being hit very hard. The other one that's really exciting, that's what this picture is and this is at the port, where they have a fantastic facility for esports competitions. And if you've not heard of esports is literally computer games and of all kinds. They use little switches and then the PC computers. This is a booming industry. It is just blowing up, and it's blowing up here in Edgewood. We took students to the board for this tournament. And there's really some financial incentives here too. There are a lot of scholarships that are available for students who are involved in esports. And I'm just going to kind of start from what I feel is the top down to where the real base incentive is for this. So you've got the potential for scholarships. Also, as far as an industry, if you were going to make esports your career, the average salary that you can make is between 40 and 60,000 a year. That's playing games, and it's going to tournaments and being sponsored through esports. 26-year-old, 27-year-old last year made $7 million alone through esports and esports sponsorship. So, I mean, that's a huge gap between 40,000 and 7 million. Toss up how much energy you want to put into something to get those salaries. So there's a bit of an uptick in getting it started in the district and making sure that we have the proper equipment for this program. But it's a very, very exciting program.
You're telling my son really does need a new PS5.
Well, yeah, surprisingly enough, they don't use the consoles. It's either a PC, which is a little more than your Xbox probably, or the PS4. It's a PC and then it's switches, those little switch devices, and they play those games, and it's just huge fun. So I go down to what I feel is one of the biggest draws, and it links directly to attendance. We know, the data's in, that students who are involved in special programs, special clubs, they come to school. This is going to be an exciting club for students to be involved in who across the board. This isn't just for, I don't want to say tech guys like me who grew up playing Pong. That was the one, the one I grew up playing. Pong. Atari, exactly, thank you, the Atari, Pong. But the demographic that's playing games online and playing games, even on it's the same games from the PC, PS4 and the Xbox, they're just played on the PC. The demographic is really diverse. So you're going to pull in, there are special scholarships and special programs that are focused for girls in the sport, which, females in technology is, when you look at the statistics, it's very low. So we want to make sure, I've done something very, very bad. Okay, maybe if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I think I froze it, and I can write on it now. That's not good. How about we get rid of the easy one? Oh, boy.
It's a little PowerPoint.
Go randomly touching the board, things happen. So anyway, I think I've talked about esports enough. So I think you may need to.
I did, I am. I lost connectivity. Give me a second. Well, hold on.
It'll turn
I'm not
good.
being there.
There we go.
All right.
I'll tell you the whole thing
Thank
now.
you.
So this is, thank goodness, is my last part of this. The tech guy's always the guy, right? Future upgrades that we need to consider. Projectors, I talked about that a little bit. I talked about the interactive whiteboards. Fire alarms are another one. Our fire alarms, by and large, are just about as old as our intercoms. And then, of course, you can't have a school whose fire alarm doesn't pass inspection, right? So we've already had to replace a couple of fire panels, and I don't know if you may know this, and if you do, I'll just repeat it. The fire alarms, when the panels need to be replaced, they have to be replaced with something that is automatically an upgrade, because you can't find that same fire panel anymore. Anytime that you do a fire panel upgrade, you have to get a permit from the city, and then you have to go through the whole blueprinting process for the campus. It's a whole thing. I figure if we keep all the fire alarms up, right? We've got a fire alarm contract, everything's being and has been inspected, keep the batteries fresh and everything's working. But as we look over the next 2 to 3 years, we need to build out a plan for potentially replacing these across the next 3 years or so. And that same idea would be with intercoms as well. To replace all the intercoms up front is pretty costly, but if we spread this out over 3 years, I think we can chew on that, a little more palatable. But our intercoms are also one that's fairly. What we've done is we've got 2 intercoms being installed brand new at Brentwood, Culture, and then at Loma Park. These will be brand new intercoms that have a lot of new safety features. There'll be a voice lift for teachers, so there'll be speakers in the room so that the kids in the back can hear just like the kids in the front. This helps with learning. There'll be a safety button on it that they can call the office or whatever else as well. In the interim, we're working with a local vendor to repair and keep maintenance on our current intercoms, the ones that are still working. And incidentally, this person and company that we've contracted with was actually the people who installed the intercoms to begin with back in a long time ago. So he's very aware of our intercoms, and he's come with some great solutions to keep these going as we build out how we're going to replace them. The last thing is the uninterruptible power sources, or the UPS. And typically, if you've got one in your home, you may have your wireless or a computer set up so that when you've got little power blips, your computer doesn't shut off. Well, Edgewood has power blips every day. I mean, they may not turn out the lights, sometimes they do, they flashes on and off. This is really bad for equipment. So equipment that we have, now go back to that network, what I started with, that equipment has to have this power buffer so that it can maintain being on while the power comes back. And in a lot of our data closets, these are older and have failed, and we're right in with the power in the building. And what happens is you can potentially damage the new equipment that we're installing, but immediately more irritating is, entire wings of hallways lose Wi-Fi access until we can get over there and get those switches turned back on. So again, all of these are upgrades that we'll be looking at and bringing to you potentially in the future. Any questions for me?
Okay, on assessments, you were talking about the Chromebooks for assessments. Is that going to be done in the elementaries as well? Because I know most of the elementaries are using iPads and stuff like that.
That's a really great question. They will continue to use the iPads. The assessments work on the iPads, but here's what we've done. With it being online, when you bring that keyboard up on the digital keyboard on the iPad, it takes away some of that real estate, right? What we did was we purchased plug-in keyboards that are specific for it. Like the iPad sits right on the back of the keyboard, and they're durable, they stack. And we didn't want to go with Bluetooth because you get 30 of those in the classroom. They may connect, they may not connect. So this will plug right into the iPad, and then the student will have more screen space for the online assessment.
Sir, I commend you on your ploy to push for this type of screen rather than the projector, but because you fix something manually on the screen that you couldn't have done probably on the projector.
Absolutely.
So congratulations, you sold the.
Thank you.
So he knows you did it intentionally.
Yeah.
Gosh,
To move a point.
I can't get anything from
On the backup power, what about the technology building itself? Have we got plans for backup generator?
Actually, that's a very good question. I do have some plans for a generator. We're going to have to look down that road to potentially getting a generator for the Guerra building. We currently have an installed brand new UPS in that room. It's as big as a walk-in closet, and so it actually conditions the power. So that set is in good shape. But even so, if we had an outage for 3 days or so, it can't last that long. We would need some kind of external power source. So I agree.
You mentioned something about the intercom having possibly a safety
Yes.
built into it. Safety such as you can notify up front in the office or whatever that there's something going on that you can't send the kid to go run and
Yeah.
tell them or whatever.
Panic button.
Yeah, panic.
So the ones that we are installing here will have a panic button on the wall, and there'll also be a panic button on the lift. We call this a voice lift system, where the teacher's voice is heard throughout, but there'll also be a panic button on the voice lift system itself, so that a silent call can be given. We can also take over anything that's plugged into the network. So if something's going on in the building, there'll be somebody who can take over every screen with a message. So that's a plus for safety as well. But You know, if you ever walked into a campus, I'm 30 years in the business myself, and I've opened at least 7 schools, and those clocks work the first 3 years. And then the time is never the same on the clocks. And I don't know why that is, but we can also use this system to manage a digital clock in the hallway, which I think, I'm not gonna promise anything here on the screen, I think we're gonna have a good time.
Sure, that's top maker security.
That's what I'm just saying. But then again, you can take over that screen as well, because it's just a display screen with any message you need to call.
How about taking over the camera on top, where there's a panic button is hit, and you can view into that room and see.
So we get into a higher conversation around putting cameras in classrooms, but they have a better system than this. But yes, that ability, I don't know that this intercom has that in it as a service, but those services do exist that allow view into the classroom. That's always a tricky conversation. I've had those conversations.
Parents, yeah.
I've had those conversations before, and
More toys, more toys, more money.
Specifically when there's
yeah.
an emergency.
Yeah. Dr. H, a while back we had.
Richard was saying that specifically when an emergency happens, that the camera becomes active so they can see what's going on in the room. That's what he's talking about, not having the camera on all.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to find out. I'll have to find out. That they may have an add-on. I don't think that was part of our conversation, but with the company that we're working with, but I'll find out.
And I only asked that because I watched NCIS too much. And so I was on there.
That's a good point of reference.
Yes, sir. A few months back, we had a teacher from Winston, robotics teacher, come in and ask about acquiring more racks for his classrooms.
Switches and things like that.
Did he
Yes.
ever get that?
So actually, I'm looking at Mirna because that's something they're still working on.
Okay.
And not just that, he didn't ask for this, but the other thing we're looking at is the stipending of these individuals too. Because typically what we do is we stipend secondary, because they're all UIL sanctioned events. This is one that, just like you heard Mr. Greathouse say, cybersecurity, all these other areas are now starting to pop up all over the state, especially in our context here, San Antonio, our Port SA. I mean, it's becoming a huge player, and so it is something we're looking at in terms of stipending them, and then as well as the items they're requesting, because not just for Southwood, but we've got teams now at Cisneros, at Brentwood, and I can't find Arts. Can't remember who else, but we've got a few teams, so it's something we're still working on.
And to be fully transparent, it's just some of the things that we're also learning to work and navigate through is that we have the commitments with the partners. When you mentioned Winston specifically, there are students. At the end of the day, every student that's sitting at an EISD facility, there are students. We also have to get better at how we navigate with the partners and have those conversations ahead of time, because we want to run. We want to go get everything for the classroom and the students for robotics, but there's also that piece where we've got to go to the partner. Is this a priority for the campus as well? Because at the end of the day, they also have a say in the budgets.
Right.
So just coming to that collaborative conversation to create the budgets ahead of time and just document it that we're going to do that at the campus too.
Mr. Santo, I don't watch NCIS, but I do watch House of Cards. So translation of that is we're trying to get the OP to also chip in on this. This is why we went into the 1882s. They have monies too. That's why it takes a little longer. If it was just us, we turn the money around.
Yeah.
But it may seem like a small drop in the bucket, but when you add all those small drops in the buckets, and everybody around here, I'm looking at Pam because they're always asking Pam for stuff. They have funds. That's why we went into 1882, so they could have funds, and then they have a dog in the hunt too with us. So let's use their money.
Thank you, sir.
Translation.
Okay. Just counter on.
Okay, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break because your lunch is here. And so Ms. Castillo is gonna turn off the video.
Supporting the areas that you've been hearing about, not only today, but with the previous meeting. as well. So one thing that's interesting about the marketing and communications is that we have a room in both houses, right? We have a room at the academics house and we have room in the operations house, because our work is very unique in that we are showcasing at the appropriate times and we're messaging a lot of the work that's taking place within all of our offices. And so that's what makes us unique in that way. And a lot of the ways that we're doing this and we're telling our story, right, because we're not only working with our departments, but we're also working with our campuses, our superintendent, is to tell the EISD story and showcase and highlight everything that we're doing here. And so we're doing this through our social media marketing efforts and then just some upcoming projects that you're going to hear about in just a little bit. So I want to just start off and remind everybody, our department oversees all of the district social media platforms. So we oversee our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are now on LinkedIn and our YouTube page. We have now added SmugMug because SmugMug is the page on our website where we house all of our photo albums from the different events that we cover. So these are a lot of the areas that our office oversees. And there's our handle. If you're not following us yet, that's our handle at EISD of SA. And then these are the individuals that make it happen, right? We have Samantha, who oversees our marketing efforts. We have Carissa and Yvonne, who oversee our social media and our multimedia efforts as well. As part of the work of our office over the past couple of years, we've kind of expanded a little bit more to go from telling our story, not only on our social platforms, but also our marketing efforts, right? So what does that mean? So now the commercials that you're starting to see regarding Edgewood ISD and the programs that we offer. Billboards and banners that have now been shared, right? We have done some billboards this past year. We've done some banners. Our media relations continue to be strong, where we continue to tell our story via our news outlets. And then something new that we did this year was our bus shelter. So again, just really expanding on how it is that we're telling our story with our billboards, with our banners. We're being very targeted with, for example, using a QR code, where if somebody's sitting here waiting for a bus, they see at the bus shelter about Edgewood ISD with their phone, they can scan that QR code and it takes them directly to the, in this case, the innovation page to find out more about our schools of innovation. So really just looking and expanding how we're telling our story within our district and making sure that we're covering as much area as we can. And like I mentioned, we're doing these things and working with our other departments. Now, we may not get into the nitty-gritty of some of the things that you've heard this afternoon and also in last week's presentation. For example, we're not going to talk about, we have 4 CTE teachers who have this type of certification, but we may showcase a CTE classroom where we're talking about, hey, this is an area of growth for Edgewood ISD, this is an area of highlight. So that's how we're using a lot of the things that you're hearing today and how we're telling that story. Some of the other things that I wanted to share with you also that we've seen is, you know, when we talk about social media, our 2 biggest areas where individuals or customers, if you will, the 2 biggest areas that they go to visit to find out about your organization is your Facebook and your website. And so that's why for us it's incredibly important to make sure those are updated as best we can. Now, I did mention the other platforms that we're using, but our Facebook and our website are our 2 biggest marketing tools that we look at. And so with that said, one of the things that we're continuously looking at is when we post to our platforms or when we post something to our website, we're not just doing it just because. You know, we don't look at it as we would our own personal platforms, right? That we just post, here we are, you know, having lunch. There's a purpose behind the messaging with what we're posting. And so we really get detailed even to the what time we're posting, what audience are we looking at. And so we've learned that our biggest audience is our women, 18 to 54, right? And the times that they are on our platform. So that's how we look at how we're posting and how we calendarize what it is that we're posting. But with that said, one of the things that I'm really proud of, and again, we get very detailed with reports, but what I show here is just our overall platform growth within our EISD platform. So for example, our audience reach and our growth within our platforms has grown tremendously for all of our pages, right? So our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, our LinkedIn page. LinkedIn is something that we've started doing a lot more this year. We have a lot of our professionals on LinkedIn, and we've been working with our HR department, for example, to showcase, hiring opportunities, jobs that we're looking for. So our LinkedIn page has grown tremendously. But one of the things that I'm really proud of, if you look at the date that I pulled was from August 1st of last year to September of this year, all of our platforms have seen an increase in following. So what does that mean? People who are following our page, people who are seeing what is taking place in Edgewood ISD. And again, we're reaching different audiences because like I mentioned, on Facebook, you have a lot of our parents. On Twitter, you have a lot of our professionals. On Instagram, you have a mix of students, you have professionals, you have parents. LinkedIn, that's more of your business community who's on there. And then YouTube, looking at our YouTube page with all of the videos that we're adding to telling our story. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is that we've seen that increase with all of our different platforms. One of the areas also, I mentioned YouTube, and so the videos that we keep sharing out, and sometimes again, those videos we could post on Facebook, we could post strictly to LinkedIn. Depending on what that video message is, we have also seen an increase with our video views over this last year. So we're really proud of that because we've noticed that videos is something that people really enjoy watching. And so we're proud to say that we've seen an increase in that. But again, those are just a little bit of feedback with regards to our social platforms, because that's where, again, we have a lot of our audiences. And something that's really interesting that I do want to mention also is there are individuals who are following us and watching what we're doing on our platforms who may not necessarily comment on the page or comment on the post. And that's really interesting to know because even though they're not commenting, they know what's going on. Let me give you an example. I was at an event last week, and I had an individual come up to me who I haven't seen in quite some time, but yet she told me, hey, congratulations for your superintendent's contract being extended. I saw that. Or, hey, I saw that you opened up this new school. Tell me about that. And so we're starting, we've been seeing it, but it's continuing to happen, that people are seeing what's happening within Edgewood ISD. Again, may not necessarily comment on it, but they're very much aware. Another interesting factor is, for example, I was looking at some individuals to hire for a vacancy that we have right now, and just in looking at where they're getting the information for this particular position, the two top ones that you saw was LinkedIn, the website, and Indeed. So with the first one being the website, the second one being LinkedIn, and then the third one being Indeed. So just those are some observations and some things that we use, tools that we use to make sure that we're messaging and targeting in the right places. And then the other thing, with that being said, so we're always thinking about how can we continue to expand. So we're really proud that we've established very nicely our social platforms. We're doing our messaging in English and in Spanish. We're doing all the platforms. We're doing our videos. But what can we do next? How can we continue to tell our story, and working with our departments? Because again, sometimes we work with HR if it's a job fair. Sometimes we work with technology if it's we need to message something out. Sometimes it's through finance because they have the A rating. So we are, again, in both houses. How can we better work with our departments and with our campuses as well to keep telling our story? So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to continue to tell the EISD story, but this time we're going to be more targeted with the individuals in departments and campuses as far as how we're going to tell our story. We're going to now start getting out, offering more training, offering some type of incentive for those individuals who are seeing those, who are the storytellers and the representatives for their different areas. And when I talk about incentives, I'm talking about swag. They love t-shirts, they love promotional items, and so how can we work with them to not only give them this training, but at the same time let them know, hey, you are an EISD storyteller, and this is a big deal, and this is how we want you to work with us to tell our story. And so this works with not only our campuses, but we're also looking to see how we can incorporate students into being EISD storytellers. And by students, I mean our high school students who are already in programs such as the communications, the journalism programs, how we can work with them. One of the other areas is we're going to continue our marketing efforts. So commercials are going to continue in English and in Spanish. We've seen great success with Univision, with people reaching out to us about saying they've seen their commercials, they've seen our commercials on the station, so that's gonna continue here with our student recruitment. But we're also looking at, instead of possibly doing billboards, we're gonna look to do some bus wraps. And so we're working with our transportation department to do some bus wraps, so we can add those bus wraps on our buses. You know, our buses travel not only within Edgewood ISD, but also beyond. And so we're looking to see, to showcase some wraps that have not only our schools on there, but, you know, the we're hiring message, how to get in touch with us with regards to a career here in our district. So that's something that's coming. Something else that we're looking into possibly updating is our website. So websites usually have about a 3 to 4 year lifespan. We're going on year 4 on ours, and so possibly just looking at making some upgrades to our website. And so that's something that we're working with our technology department to consider and look how we can best do that. And then the other thing that we're doing is, again, we're looking to create a video archive. So just like we have a photo archive and photo albums, right, for all of the events that we cover, and you see a lot of those photos many times in presentations, right? You see how so many of our staff members use those photos, and community members look at those photos and see, hey, this is great, how can I get that picture? They can go to our website and get that. We're also doing that for our video archive as well. And so now, when we send stories to media, if they're not able to come, hey, that's okay, we have it for you. Here's the information, here's a little bit of video for you to share, and it just makes it easier for us to share our story. And so that's something else that we're working on for this upcoming year. So those are just some of the things that we're working with in our office to continue to tell our story. Again, that's our biggest thing, right? We're here to tell our story, and as I mentioned at the top, you know, we're unique in that we are working with all of our departments to tell that story. And so these are just some of the things lessons that we've learned, and some of the things that we're looking into future years. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Pam, but I don't know if there's any questions that anybody may have. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the stock market? You had that one.
Where do we put our money, Richard?
In your pocket. I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay. You just wanted to see the stock, you just wanted to see the arrows going up, that's what it was, yes.
I do have one
Yes, sir.
question. You mentioned that there's a platform where the kids are getting in. So are we utilizing that to, you know, to make sure that they're informed about, you know, our pathways and all the opportunities that are going on?
So we're using that platform because that's where they tell us that they're on. But we're also looking to do a better job at showcasing those areas. So for example, CTE, that's an area that we're going to be more focused on showcasing and highlighting here into this upcoming year when we start our student recruitment, because we have great programs in there. And so that's something that we're working with our CTE instructors to make sure that we highlight those areas. And by highlighting those areas, then we're also to get our students in there. And then we're also looking, because I mentioned working with our students, maybe have our students be ambassadors for us in that way as well, where they can help us tell that story, and they can help us share the messaging amongst them, the students, with regards to how we're doing that.
Beyond that, Mr. Soto, we also heard a really great plan from Dr. Bland and the CTE group, with support from Mr. Garcia, the counseling department, and Mr. Rodriguez. They put together a plan that they're going to roll out as far as getting down to the middle schools while they're in the classes. So they also have an awareness, for lack of a better word, where the counselors are getting information. Okay, you heard Mr. Vino talk earlier. We have, Agas Garcia, we have a Peter Panner for culinary arts and memorial. What does that look like? So getting the information to students, not when I'm ready to enroll in high school, but making the choices right now. If I know this is a strand that I'm interested in, then my path can be Gus Garcia, then Memorial High School for culinary arts. And these are the classes that I offer. So getting down to the middle school level to know what the next steps are if they're interested in a particular pathway. So aside from the marketing and things that happen, it's also being able to get into through the counselors, into the classrooms at the middle school level to get some of these
some of these stories told.
Not just the stories, but the pathways. That's the word.
And then that's kind of how we're also connecting with that department, connecting with the individuals through our storytellers at those departments, campuses, so that way they can help, work and share what it is that we need to message out to students, because they're actually there on campus.
So with these middle students, are you, do you have incentives for them so they can be your storytellers? And then while they're getting access, they get the little commercials about, the
Right.
pathways. So they're more informed when they're choosing, what their next steps are gonna be. So they're just, you throw in your little commercials.
Right, and so that's how we're doing it through the storytellers. So
Okay.
connecting with those individuals at the campus, where we can give them a lot more training on tell the campus story, share and showcase. You mentioned culinary arts. If it's culinary arts, if it's automotive, it's whatever specific program that is, we can give them the tools so that way they can be more specific. They can get in touch with whatever students they want to, to be a part of that commercial, and that we're able to grow that messaging at the campus level involving more students. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on what Roy just asked, Dr. H asked me when he was a newbie in the district if we ever had anything like a television, our own in-house. I said yes. So we used to have it at Kennedy High School. Way back and throw it away. Do we have any plans, or have we looked into possibly getting broadcasting, or?
Some of our campuses do that. Some of our campuses have like their campus news, have their campus news crews representing their campuses. And so they have it at the campus. We don't have something at a district level per se, but it's definitely something we can make note of.
Your office is mainly district-wide. How detailed do you get, or at what level do you get to at the individual schools?
So we work with them. For example, we work with our campus principals. We work with the individuals who are overseeing maybe the platforms. We give them tips. We give them support on how to better message, right, their, what's going on at the campus level. One of the things that we've seen is over the course of the year, they've been doing a lot better at how they're sharing their stories on their Facebook pages. And again, we share with them the same information that we see. In looking at your campus pages analytics, you have more parents from this age to this age, and this is the time that they're more active. So maybe this is the time you want to post something. So we're working with them. We've been cautious just because of the world that we're coming out of, but that's where this is going to come into play, because now we're going to be a lot more strategic in how many times we're meeting with them, what information, and how are we going to measure their growth.
I think that you're going to capture a lot more of the parents as these schools get out there more involved in getting their message out.
Yes.
And
Yes, and one of the things that we've heard actually from some parents is that they like what they're seeing. So they like what they're seeing from the campuses. And then the other thing too, a lot of times, because we've been able to really grow a good following on our district pages, a lot of times when we share information from the campus page to the district page, if there's somebody who doesn't understand something, the followers that are on that page sometimes will answer. So that very organic growth where they themselves are starting to say, hey, no, you're wrong, that's not how it is. Perfect example, intercession. When we posted about intercession, there were some comments from specific individuals who were, I wouldn't say negative, maybe there was just a misunderstanding with regards to how intercession works. And so it was really great to see other parents come in and say, hey, no, if you haven't heard anything, it's because da-da-da-da, or reach out to the campus. They helped me really, right away. And so now they're starting to share that information, which is really nice to see, because now it's done in, it's done in a much more organic way than everybody jumping on the bandwagon and kind of saying negative stuff about it.
That's what we wanted. At some point, I remember when we first started that we wanted the parents to be our Advocates or PR
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes, they're the ones that are the biggest ambassadors for us. Besides the staff, they're the ones. So to see them now commenting and responding is really nice to see.
Is this something that maybe the team board could champion, where they're trying to promote their school and they have a little body that is, providing them input, and then now you have every school engaged?
So we did talk with George about the team board and Olga about the team board, and there is a social media young lady who is overseeing the work for the team board, and we are going to connect with her. So that way we can see how we can kind of tell their story, representing their own campuses as well.
And that's something I think where a school can be recognized as leaders of the pack if they're the top school for that month. And then now all of a sudden it gets more competitive, so now the story, we're hearing a bunch of stories.
Yes, yeah, so we have team board also on our list of connections to include them in our storytellers as well.
That's good.
Yes,
That's
sir.
awesome.
Yes, sir,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Ma'am, when the word parents came up in bandwagon, are we using this also as a medium, putting out the information about reacting at schools, like we talked about it, about the way we reacted at Jefferson, what format they should use? Or?
So that's what the meeting this month is. Remember I was telling you guys that on the 26th, there's gonna be a town hall, I think it's the Performing Arts Center, to talk about what parents should expect in terms of communication during an event such as Jefferson. We're gonna use that as a case study, but then also what do we expect from parents too? Because the onus always seems to be on the district, and that's a two-way street, because if you notice the way that the behavior was, that the parents were really out of line in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
And so we wanna use that as an example. We wanna update about the safety audit that we just received. And then also, we wanna talk about fentanyl and what's happening in our neighborhoods, because it's everywhere in the nation right now. So that's on the 26th, I believe it's at 5:30. It's already been out in social media. And of course, you guys will be invited to that too, but yes.
But that's gonna hit whoever attends, but on using this format with media, just to set a guideline and repeat it every week or whatever, just to have it run on there, instead of having to click on it and say, well, this is what I should do, just as a, just like you remind them of certain things going on in the district, just hit that one page about this is what we expect you to do, and just keep on repeating it,
And I think the idea is to record it, have it live on the website. I know Ms. Kayla's group puts out the EISD Excellence Magazine every week, online magazine. All those things we use every format possible to include even the grapevine. That's what we have the Women in Vision group for too. So beyond that, we're gonna exhaust every opportunity we have and to educate the parents on it. And then of course to follow those procedures at the different schools. That's what the chief and LT and their team do. But thank you for that guidance.
Thank you. Yes, if there's not
All
any
right,
other
thank you.
questions, I'm sorry.
Definitely.
Thank you, Ms. Kayla. All right, so we're gonna talk today, we're probably not gonna cover the glossary because you have it in your handout. Sorry. We're gonna talk about budget review. Oh, what is the deal?
It's my fault.
You're the deal.
I wanted to see if everyone was awake. Okay, tell yours, Pam.
All right, we're gonna talk about fund balance, and then enrollment trends, and then finish up with what the Business and Finance Department is currently working on. So you've seen this before. This is what the budget we adopted on June 20th. And we did revise the ESSER numbers out here in August. And we revised those due to the fact that we did some changes to the compensation plan. We increased the beginning teacher rate to $58,000 and also increased our minimum wage to $15. So currently, the plan is to cover those increases with our ESSER dollars. All right, the fund balance, y'all have seen this one before, and I do want to point out that the year 2019 that is in yellow, it's highlighted because that is the year that the fiscal year changed from being an August 31st to a June 30th, so it is a short year, so I just wanted to point that out. So the TEA, as well as U.S. Department of Ag on the food service side, they also have a recommendation for districts to have a 3-month reserve of your operating expenses. So for Edgewood ISD, that would be a reserve of $21.2 million. So at the end, at June 30th of 21, we had just about $61 million in fund balance. I am anticipating for fiscal year end 2022 to be very much in that ballpark. So as part of the budget adoption, normally we do sweeps about December, January, we do sweeps. This year, we're probably not going to do the sweeps, but we have already swept money, but we swept it from fund balance because, again, we've moved a lot of expenses to ESSER. So general fund was pretty thin. So we did, at the June budget, we moved $10 million from fund balance into buy the warehouse, and also for PPS's ongoing projects that they have. Usually he would have a little bit starting the budget, and then we would do sweeps and give him money to finish out those projects. We just did that as part of the budget process. All right, so enrollment history. So you can see in the 22-23 year, that is as of last Friday, the actual enrollment as of last Friday. So you can see that we're in a declining enrollment situation. Now I do want to say that this year we did receive about 379 students that are new to Edgewood ISD, and I believe maybe about 200 that were previously EISD students that had gone elsewhere and they have come back. So Miss Kayla's marketing is working. All right, we'll do questions at the end. All right, so enrollment projections. So we have a demographer that comes in and provides us information. So what they are saying for 2030 to 2031, that we're going to be under 6,000 students in the district. So if you'll go back and look that in 15-16, we had over 11,000, and in 15 years, we're going to be down to 6,000 students. So we always need to keep aware of that, especially the effect that that has on funding. So a decline of 288, that's a little over $2.2 million to the district. So as we continue to monitor enrollment, we all have to monitor expenses. And of course, our largest expense is with Mr. Vigno's group in HR. That's probably about 80% of our cost. So we're going to have to be strategic in watching.
Let me add to the board, that's a hard thing to look at, because obviously, even though you may think, well, that's 2030, 31, that's why we're making the moves we're making now in terms of making sure we're marketing and branding our programs, because that's where I think that in the last, I can't recall when you started to see a large influx of charter schools in San Antonio, but what the charter schools have done, the marketing and branding, they were ahead of the public school game, probably, at least from where I'm coming from, a decade before. And so when you think about the marketing and branding and luring of kids out, that's where public school systems are not having to do that more precisely and more strategically. So again, although the numbers are dropping, there are things we're doing now to make sure that we keep as much of our enrollment as possible. So that's why I wanted to show you these numbers, because it's something that we don't stop talking about in terms of keeping kids. And what is it, 2030? So that's still about 8 to 9 years away. There's a larger context too. So there's a in terms of the city and all the school districts, because we're not the only one losing kids. Everybody is losing kids in general. We also saw, because of the pandemic, a lot of students enter these micro schools. And so you have students that are not being educated at home. They're not in the public school system anymore. And so we'll see where that ends up. But those are the realities we're facing. And then I know you're going to talk about declining birth rates too.
Yes, sir. All right. So, as Dr. Hernandez led into this, the birth rates are declining nationally and in Texas. So this is a training that I had gone to back in last spring, and they had presented these numbers. I just pulled out Texas, United States, and Bexar County. I could not go down as far as Edgewood ISD, but with our demographers, we were able to get that information. So EISD is at a 20.5% decline in birth rates, and that's for the 4 zip codes. But also along with the declining birth rates is our population in our community is aging, and new families are not moving in. The kids go to school, hopefully they go to college or get a certificate of something, and they're moving out and they're not coming back into the community. So that's also something else that we have to be cognizant of. All right, so current projects that business and finance are working on. We're in the process of completing up the audit for June 30th, 2022. That will be, the auditor will be presenting the audit to the board at the next workshop. I think we've allowed about 20 minutes for the auditor to come in and answer any questions and present the report to you. And along with HR and academics working on the option to increase the dual credit stipend, and hopefully where we can pay for that, hopefully out of funds that we're already using to pay tuition to the universities, that would reduce, hopefully, to pay that stipend. Also, we're working on our investing options for our money. I mean, like we showed, we've got about 60 million in fund balance. Of course, we don't want to invest, the full 60 million, but we are looking at our cash flow and what monies that we do have available month in, month out, and trying to invest those. Of course, right now, the interest rates are going up because the Fed keeps raising those. And I think for September, I believe, in our earnings overall, debt service and general fund, we were up to about 120,000 in interest earnings. So that's refreshing after being at 0.09 for so long that now we're up to about 2.67% interest rate. So, but we still are trying to work with our advisor and hopefully plan out some longer term investments. And I had an investment training the last 2 days, and she's thinking that the interest rates will stay up in this and possibly go up a little bit more for about 2 years. So we want to look and see if there's a possibility of locking in some money a little bit longer. So probably with her recommendation in November, we'll probably bring back a revision to our investment policy to allow us to go out a little bit further. But of course, we don't really do anything without her guidance, because she is the professional there. Also, evaluating and projecting our ESSER funds. September 2024, the ESSER funds are they're going to be gone. And that other slide, just for this current year, we're paying nearly $22 million out of ESSER. So we need to be evaluating what we have paid out of there, what we're going to pay out of there, what we want to keep that we were paying out of there, what was beneficial, look at it, was it beneficial, was it utilized, etc. So we'll be evaluating that and bringing back some recommendations and seeing where we're going to be. It's going to take a few months though to put that together. I mean, we've got a lot in there. So, all right, I will turn it over to Ms. Martinez unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's make some connections, right? That's what today is going to be about, right? Making the connections and what happens. Last month and this month, and this is something that we look at continuously, enrollment is a big deal for us. Enrollment drives everything that we do in every single area, every department, and the services we provide to students. It tells us how much money we're going to generate based on our average daily attendance. That translates into our staffing models and the work that Ms. Trevino does based on schedules that academics and leadership put together, course offerings, etc. That tells us how many teachers we're going to need, who we're going to hire. Do we need them in CTE, dual language? It also drives what Mr. Greathouse does in technology. Do we need to upgrade and change infrastructures to accommodate new testing requirements? All of these drive the work that we do. Mr. Williams was just talking this morning about having to do walkthroughs at the campus. It's about that time of the year. Why? To build the plan of what changes we need at each of the buildings to accommodate either new innovations or those campuses that have grade level growths. Where we have 1882 partnerships, they're going to get an additional grade level moving into next year. All of those things that happen and that you heard here today end up normally happening with finance amendments in the middle of the year. We start with a sweep process that Ms. Beverly normally does to accommodate some of these projects. Well, she funded that money so that we knew ahead of time that some of these things were coming. But you can start seeing that all the decisions and everything that's happening when it happens with academics and leadership, all the support, everything that's happening for the students has to be supported in some way, shape, or form from these areas. I'm going to go back to Ms. Bentley's slide here and talk about ESSER funds. And it's not just ESSER. You heard Ms. Trevino talk about T-Class as well. We've done extremely well over the last few years to apply for every and any grant that has been available to us. We've been able to acquire technology and replace some of our computers, some of our infrastructure. Mr. Greathouse recently applied for an E-rate grant. That's going to also allow us to replace some of our infrastructure. The Chromebooks are pretty much grant funded. So we've leveraged opportunities. So we talk about this, even dual credit stipend that Mr. Reno is going to propose probably at this month, at the very latest next month, so that we can attract and bring our own dual credit teachers. We also look at how that's going to be funded. Instead of us paying tuition to the college gives us $600 so that we can stipend the teacher. So if I'm a teacher, I get a base stipend. I can also add another $600 for every course that I teach, right? So some of these recommendations that you hear throughout the year, they're not always budget neutral, but we try very hard to keep them as close to budget neutral as we can. Why? Because we're very aware that the money tree doesn't last forever. So as decisions are being made, as Dr. Hernandez brings recommendations and suggestions, and the team talks about it, we try really, really hard to stay in that space where we're trying to be proactive and minimize that impact when ESSER goes away, right? And also start looking at other resources to leverage other grants that we know are coming in the horizon. We know that there's safety grants. We don't know what that looks like exactly yet, but Mr. Greathouse is already looking at panic buttons, you know? It's safety. So maybe some of those intercom systems partially can be funded through some of those resources. So we're always trying to look a little bit further ahead and try to lay out foundations and plans to leverage funding that may be accessible that we know are coming through. Let's see, the next steps that you can count on over the next few months, this is just part of the planning, right? You're gonna see some stipend proposals. Dr. Hernandez has already talked about this, and Ms. Bentley presented as part of the plan a few months ago, but you're gonna hear about mid-year retention stipends. But notice some of these things here that you're starting to see, and Ms. Trevino has alluded to some of these before. Performance, it's not just retention, right? But we now need to look at performance, longevity, buyback, the buyback of days, right? Because we even have attendance. It's not just for students, but also for the adults. We need the adults in the classroom. How would we pay for that? If I have you in the classroom, I don't have to pay a sub. But again, making some budget neutral recommendations that help us keep the teachers in the classroom. We're also going to propose a perfect attendance resolution in the next couple of months, right? But having some skin, some incentive to make that happen. And we already talked about the dual credit stipend proposal, trying to make that as budget neutral as possible. How much are we paying in tuition? How do we translate that to make sure that the teacher is compensated and compensated well to keep them in the classroom? Because it is about compensation. It is about compensation as well. We're no longer in the place where teachers are teachers. There's a lot of investments that the district has to make to keep our teachers in the classrooms. Ms. Bentley will have the final audit review. It'll be presented at the board next month, but we'll discuss it a little bit more depth when we have the next meeting here. So any questions that we may not get to answer, we'll have a little bit more time to dig in if we need to in December. She'll talk about the finance amendment. Even though we're not going to have sweeps, by December we'll have an idea of where she needs to move monies around just to finish projects out that we have during the year. Mr. Williams will keep updating you on PPS projects, as will Mr. Greathouse with technology and where we're at with those things. And about December, January, February, we start the conversations about what staffing starts to look like next year. So it's important with the enrollment projections. It is important that we have all these things mapped out about where we're going with innovation, because all of these things feed into the circle of what we do on a day-to-day to make sure that we have the support in place so that leadership and academics can do what they do best in the classroom with the kiddos. So Dr. Hernandez, does anybody have any questions? I know we're right up on time.
All right.
Board, any additional questions on anything? And of course, if we don't ask now, you can always ask me later too. Before we turn to, yes, sir.
I think you mentioned that we're pretty close to maxing out how many innovation schools we can have that are allowed. So does it make sense if we're competing against charter schools, that we invite some charter schools into the district, we lobby to be able to have them as partners, and we provide them facilities so they don't have to, build a new facility when there's already facilities. And we just become, more of a district that has more partners. Is that an option?
It is. Any of those options are available. We're not at the max yet. I mean, we could essentially keep going with in-district charters. Why I'm choosing us not to do that is because we also need to make sure that we have enough of our own schools that are still district operated by themselves, that we also aren't forced to not need as much staff. And so that's why I haven't chosen to keep going with that model. There is probably one more model that has to do with the IB kids and where they end up in high school. But that's gonna work very nicely because of the fact that we have a fine arts school already. The school that I think we're gonna have to consider that we weren't considering before based on qualitative data we're receiving from Mr. Garinca's group, Salinas' group. So I wrote myself a note that next time we meet with Mr. Chavez's group, we're gonna need to talk to you about the 5-year innovation plan and really come back to that conversation. Where is that gonna end up in the next 5? Because I do think that if the performing arts school at Stafford keeps growing, because we have people on the waiting list, that might be a model we can replicate at one of our other elementary schools. Those seem to attract kids back because parents, it's pretty easy to understand what fine arts is. IB, you kind of have to explain it. And then it's still a conversation and parents don't really see that until years later. So that's a hard one to talk about. And then STEAM, Mr. Greathouse talks a lot about the importance of, esports, and that actually plays. There was the joke about, so I guess I should buy my son a PS5. A lot of parents still think you're just playing a game. That's not a real thing. It's not. I mean, that's actually erroneous thinking. That's gonna lead to a career. So all that to say, we've got to reevaluate where we are with our programming to attract. Our kids went somewhere. They've been going somewhere. And so we've got to convince them enough to, 1, come back to the programming, 2, make sure that we're telling our story in a way that they see as an attractive thing, and then 3, that our products and services are getting to our schools in the way they're supposed to. And that we're making sure we're staying out of the limelight in a negative way, because we've been at this, 4 years now? There's still we can still do an even better job of telling our story, providing our services, attracting the right teachers, making sure we attract the teachers that do credit. So I hope what you start seeing how all this gets weaved together. That's why when I envisioned these meetings, that's what this was. This was a purpose for 2 reasons. 1, the board to have a better understanding of the intricate works of the district, but also for my people to think a lot more systems thinking. I'm not saying they don't, but we can all get better at thinking systems thinking. So we tend to think in our areas, and this all connects together. So all that to say, I don't think we're at a point where we would actively go out and pursue a charter system, because what will happen there is that the ones you want to, in all fairness, because I don't have anything against charter schools, but the ones that are worth pursuing don't need our buildings anymore. That changed the last legislative session. They can now raise the capital that we can for bonds. So where we're restricted by our 16 square miles, they're not. They can have kids, they have kids all over the city of San Antonio, the Valley, Dallas, Houston. All that counts so that they can raise bonds. We cannot. All I'm saying is that playing field isn't the same.
Right.
And so because they can leverage funds now, they don't need us anymore.
What about all these kids, new kids that are coming to us, that communities and districts don't want, but we accept them? Can that be a source where we start increase in our enrollment.
So it's a niche, yes, it's definitely a niche that we want to leverage. I mean, you have the kids that are in Learn for Life, and we still don't have enough there. I will tell you, even though that program is graduating kids, it looks really good in the window dressing, great. I mean, but when you start looking at details, we still need more kids there. And it's not just having 120 kids there, it's are they there consistently so that they're making ADA. Ms. Brenda